So I hope you've had a nice opportunity to reflect on the on the quite tricky question, I think, posed by Gemma and Alessandra, but hopefully a kind of productive one around your position with your own practice, or around this coefficient of art, a definition, I suppose, of your kind of practice through thinking about it as art or its intersection with other sorts of disciplines and where it sits within that. I guess I, had the first time I'd heard of the exercise was also today for the presentation, so it's kind of good to kind of see how it feels to be put on the spot with that sort of thing. And I think that's why I thought it might be nice for you to have the break to think it over. But I was also, from my point of view, thinking, oh well, maybe I just really need to be more specific and think about it in relation to where I am right now, because obviously this kind of position can change, and also sort of in relation to, I suppose, a lot of people that are taking part in this residency as well are wearing many different hats and kind of doing lots of different projects in parallel as well. So kind of, is it useful to think about it just in terms of the role that you're in within this residency for me? So I mean, I think we can maybe put a couple of extra parameters around that and just sort of think, if it is, if you're struggling with that question, maybe just think about, what's the position that you're in right now, and kind of like, and also sort of in relation to the work or the research or the action project that you're doing in relation to this residency in particular, because I think that was my way of starting to get to grips with it. So what I'll do is we'll break you. So we've got almost 30 people. So if we kind of like put you into groups of 5 or 6, there should be 5 or 6, 5 groups of 5 or 6 people. And maybe you can just sort of discuss from your own perspective where you've put yourself and why. And if there's a representative from that group, literally just to kind of like feedback where people feel that they are, each individual, and also maybe some of the discussions that came up on it. I quite like this idea that within the half an hour, you might also sort of get a chance to, get some feedback on whether people think you've put yourself in the right place, and kind of whether there's any negotiation around that as well. So you're still sort of talking to each other about your individual positions, and the feedback should be about what each of the individuals, where they sit. So we're not asking you to come up with a collective position just yet, although maybe we can do that right at the end of the residency. We'll probably have about sort of just 4 or 5 minutes for each representative to feedback. So just kind of, keep an eye out for any kind of interesting bits of conversation or bits that are sticking out for you. So is everyone happy with with what they're doing for the next half an hour? I'll take that as yes, a couple of thumbs up and some nods, so that's good enough for me. So I'll put you in these 5 breakout rooms that you'll all go to automatically, and see you. Let's come back at 5 past the hour, but I'll give you the little sort of minute countdown anyway in 10 minutes before that. Okay, enjoy. Cool. Well, I hope that was useful discussions. And Alessandra and Gemma, sorry, I didn't realize I was going to send you into one of the groups as well. So we need to have a think about whether you're able to facilitate this bit, or did you listen in on the group, or did you contribute?
Yeah, I mean, we just ask the other people in the group to share with us their projects.
Okay. That's good.
So we just look at the projects in thinking about the coefficient of art, basically. So it was quite okay.
Okay, but you were there as like listeners for that one as well. So I think what we could do now is that maybe we'll just ask a representative from each of the group just to sort of feedback for if we've got 3 or 4 minutes each, just to kind of explain what positions people kind of came or brought within your group, and kind of the any kind of themes that were coming up or questions. It might be nice to just sort of share those for now. So group 1, who would like to be the representative of that group?
So Orecchie is the representative of the first group, and at the beginning we were discussing about it's very hard to define a distinction between the final result and the process, and if it's really necessary at the end to like create all this the coefficient itself, no? So we were thinking about why we should not position ourselves in a planet, but why we just create a new planet. And the idea was exactly to like recreate something in order to not really have to choose, because we didn't feel the necessity to define a clear position, and we thought about what it means, what is the difference between a traditional way of thinking art and social or embodied practice, and if there is really at the end a distinction between these two. And so also around the, yeah. And then Ornella, what we were saying,
and then we starting also to jump on the other planet. And yeah, it was like going in different coefficient, and you are still not in just one. It's like an open, and it's like when you have a project. I think we were discussing as you do a project.
yeah.
So, and also in a project, the coefficient can be in different value. It depends on which part you are also. So, and then after that we went to a black hole. And Federica used to.
Yeah, so from the new planet that we said, okay, the new planet can be a planet that doesn't have rules, so it goes around. But then what if instead of being a planet, we are a black hole, that it kind of embodies everything, and there is no more a distinction of time and space, and yeah, there are no limits in a way. And there was also a suggestion of the Big Bang, so the explosion and so on. And then we were also thinking about, also inside this metaphor, what it means to be a satellite, and also how art is dependent on different planets every time, but in the same time, being a satellite means also that you reflect and mirror different light from different realities. So yeah, at the end, I think was this, right? If I don't.
Sounds good. Sounds like you really embraced the interplanetary language. That's with the kind of like, yeah,
I'm amazed.
the amount of astrology that we're covering. Any comments from you, Gemma or Alessandra?
Well, I really enjoy that you really, took the chance to play with the immensity and the possibilities of the space. That pretty much is what we are proposing with this activity, to really, think about it and don't feel that you have to fit with the criteria.
Yeah, that is something that is always coming up. I mean, like, we work a lot with these criteria and ideas and rules and etc., etc., etc. But I think it's pretty exciting when there is somebody that wants to overcome that. So to say, let's create a new planet, or like just an explosion, and then let's recreate something new from scratch. So, but it never happened with the solar system so far. So that's quite cool.
Great stuff. Okay, well, let's keep it moving forward. And group number 2, who was the representative from them? Can anyone remember who was in group 2?
Well,
if you can't remember your group name, then just dip in.
We didn't choose a representative.
Okay.
I could start, and then somebody else could jump in.
It does.
We had Elena, Leia, Rahana, and Daniela. Is that right? And yeah, we had something a bit similar. We didn't quite go off on a tangents with space, but we definitely had a feeling that we were quite far out, and maybe that it wasn't so neat, it was more like some spinning around, and there was a sense that maybe the sun wasn't that important, and we wanted to just not really worry about it too much and float around in space doing something else. I would say it was more or less, and we talked a bit about our projects, and I think there was quite a lot of general feeling of being a bit far away, and then a sense that maybe we're not sure that that really matters that much as well. So, I mean, I think for me personally, it kind of matters, but in the group, I would say there was definitely a question around, do we really need to get close to the sun? There was the sense of like, is the art there as a part of a wider strategy, and it doesn't have to dominate, you know? So perhaps Elena or Leo or Daniela or Rehana would like to contribute something else.
Or are you happy with Sarah's? She's very good at being the representative of these groups. You're always saying, so each time you kind of put yourself forward, but it always works really well. So yeah, again, a kind of like a more fluid position. I think we're sort of understanding there, but I think it's a good point that kind of, well, the metaphor that Gemma and Alessandra put forward of the sun being definitely the center and the main thing is kind of like, yeah, what if we turn that around? It's interesting. Anything from Gemma and Alessandra? Do we need the sun?
I think it's quite interesting now that we are doing this exercise again in a very different context, that also the idea to choose the solar system chart is something that can be questioned again, because like I've never been into the space, like, so I don't know if this is true or not, right? So I think yeah, it's not important to be like as close as the sun as much as possible, but I think it's important to frame it with, if we go back to the idea of arte utile, it's important to keep art and utile, because otherwise, where is the point to use art as a tool for change? But yeah, exactly, like, it can be 1%, but still, I think it's interesting that the two things go together.
That's great. Cool. Well, again, maybe it's, you know, something we'll kind of continue to discuss as well, actually, that sort of centrality of art. But yeah, we've kind of, okay, we'll move on to the third group, and do people know who was the representative of that? Is it Tatiana, or are you just scratching your head?
Okay, now I'm going to start, and then I have the other group members just jump in. Well, we actually started questioning in the beginning also what the sun implies, whether you were trying to fool us and lead us back to this conventional understanding of the shiny art world, the visual art, and all that we or most people identify as art that are maybe not so well versed or introduced into socially embedded, engaged practices. And then from then on, we just continued thinking of whether we don't want to accept that definition of the sun being that visual art thing, but just kind of think it already as what we are trying to do here, all in this residency. And then Ida had a beautiful metaphor that also kind of like the implosion of the sun, and then the restructuring of the solar system in new ways.
Beautiful. I think it's like, yeah, I'm very into like the, again, next level poetry that we're getting out of this, or the sci-fi novel that we're going to write together about the implosion of the universe. So anything from you, Gemma or Alessandra?
Well, I will say that I'm pretty happy with all these reflections, because in fact it's a kind of it is very, very much, at least I think, in the spirit of what arte utile wants to do, and the archive itself wants to provoke. That is this idea of we could change everything. It's like, I mean, the concept of art is written, but we are, you know, practicing art. So we are now in the moment to rethink about what is useful and what is not.
Cool. Okay, that sounds good. On to group 4 now, I think. Who was representing group 4?
It was me, Stefano, Alessandra, Gemma, and Catalina. And I don't know, we start with something, because actually we said a lot of things, I will just give some hints, and if you can add that later, great. So we basically, Gemma and Alessandra asked about our practice and to situate ourselves within the planetary chart. And at the beginning, me and Stefano had some issues being curators because at the first glance we saw it more related to the artistic practice, but then we came to the conclusion that we're still operating in the artistic realm, and so of course we have to try this I don't know, this positioning within the chart. And then Catalina showed us this amazing project that she's doing right now, and it's a project that is an intersection of many things: pedagogy, artistic project, could be social entrepreneurship to me, for example. And so we spoke about the multiple layers of socially engaged practices and how they intervene into the real through these layers. And someone else wants to add something. Maybe Stefano or Catalina.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but my camera today doesn't want to work. I'm very sorry for that. And yeah, I had, as Ginevra said, we had this issue as curators on positioning ourselves in the solar system, but then I was thinking that often in my practice I feel like I'm I feel pulled towards the sun in a kind of way, and my practice is often about to resist and going towards Pluto, you know. And this seems to be the fairest way to look at my practice today and at my projects. So I would position myself into Jupiter, you know, in the middle part of the solar system scheme. And
yeah, we said also that this positioning varies according to time specificity on how you feel the moment of your life or on the process of the project. It depends on many different factors, and the time specificity is a very important one. Then Stefano was telling us about one project, but the room just was shut down, and so we came back here in this the plenary conversation. So that's it.
Very good. So again, I kind of like, yeah, thinking about time and space as relative, which is always good to acknowledge as well. And I guess Gemma and Alessandra already fed back a little bit into those conversations as well. So we'll just kind of go to the final group, and any kind of thoughts that you had from your chat. Ciao.
That would be me. So we started asking to try to define art for us, and we ended up that was too different. I mean, we had similar ideas, but then it's so personal because the approach to the practice itself, it's personal. And we had, I mean, we were in 5, I guess, 6, 5, and was one curator who struggled a little bit to position herself, and 2 of us were more like randomly thinking about everywhere. And so we end up in choosing 2 points of view of the solar system. One was like close to the sun, you have a classical approach to art. So the outcome is the object. And so everything that is close to the sun, it's more, it's more related to what somebody says before, the shiny object, you know. So, but that point of view carries a problem, which is that the embedded practice and the practice itself will be far away from the sun. So it's not also, it didn't fit what we had in mind. So the second approach was to the opposite. So everything was close to the sun, was more related to the engagement and to social practicing also. So we end up in finding two different positions. One was Jupiter. So a part of the group chose Jupiter because it's right in the middle. And it doesn't matter what's your point of view, you will be in the middle and you will be able to switch from one point to the other one. And two of us went for the meteorites, which is something that we really like. So this idea of being objects, still objects, but free in the space, able to crash everywhere, to get against the other planet, to land on planets, and to not follow any kind of, how do you say, well, not gravity, but, in Italian, how do you say, come si dice in italiano?
Orbit.
Yes, thank you, the orbit, because you just cross all over and you just pass through time and space and everything. So we end up being so-and-so.
Great, thank you, Alice. It's good
You're
to
welcome.
sort of get a good overview of the conversation. It sounds like everyone's had very exciting conversations, which I think is good, from like a sort of a good provocation from Alessandra and Gemma as well, and hopefully I think things that we can sort of follow up on. I mean, it really, put me into a bit of a kind of spin over kind of like my break as well, thinking like, well, yeah, I think, you're often asked these questions, or certainly were a few years ago. Oh, so why is it art? Why are you an artist if you're doing that? What's the kind of why call it art, and these sort of questions. Whereas I think this different way of thinking about it spatially, without wanting to be too much of a pun, but is kind of is quite an important thing to reflect on your own position and where it is that you're at, even if it's something that you're changing very often. It's kind of good to kind of just understand where you sit. And I really like this kind of thing that's come out there about sort of what happens if you turn that on its head from is the art world the kind of thing that we get, if we get too close to it we get burnt, or is it that it's almost too close to the social, because it is clearly somewhere in between the distance that being an art practitioner affords you, the critical distance that art can allow is really important in those kind of social projects, because this is another way of kind of thinking about embeddedness, I think. So thanks very much to Alessandra and Gemma for giving us the opportunity to talk through that. I'm just going to wrap up quite soon because we've got a couple of things to think about this week, but did you have any kind of final things you'd like to say, Ali or Gemma?
But first of all, thank you very much for your answers, because it's always super important for us to have this kind of moment of exchange, because of course it also feeds our practice and the way we work. I just want to say that thinking about this idea of how our practice or how we work in a post-pandemic future was one of the starting point of the residency program in September. I think it's quite crucial that we claim our work as artwork, especially now, and considering also the context, particularly in Italy, which is quite difficult, but not only, I would say worldwide, because these kind of practices are not just art practices, you know what I mean? If you have the possibility to browse into the archive, you would see how artists and art practitioners, art workers are rethinking law, rethinking urban planning, rethinking sustainability, etc., but through the lens of art. So I think it's quite crucial and important that, especially now, we claim that art is a space of imagination, but the space of the possibility and implementation of new solution and potentially a new world. So that's just what I wanted to say as a reminder first for myself. And
beautifully put. And anything from you, Gemma?
No, that's beautiful. I don't want to add anything else. I just like it.
let me take us back to some, boring practical stuff to ground us in the end. So just okay, yeah, just so you know what's happening, what's coming up soon. So Alessandra and Gemma will be available for some one-to-ones on Wednesday, which we'll do as the sign up. So I'll send a email out about that with the recordings from today as well. And our next seminar is going to be with Nadia Moya and Fernando Escobar from University of Columbia in the art school there. So that's the next time we'll all get together. I wanted to kind of just really quickly say, obviously, we've already, we predicted it, but there's the shift into a more sort of remote version of this residency has meant that we're kind of just trying to be a bit more responsive and think about, well, what can we bring extra as well as things that we might be sort of not able to do. So I'm going to start opening up a lot more opportunities for like one-to-ones in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, because we're sort of thinking about, again, this kind of convergent stage of the residency that we're in, and having to kind of, think about, well, what do we, what can we leave as the trace of this experience? What is the learning that we've had? And it's not to kind of put a full stop on it, but a slight pause. So I think one-to-ones and group critiques have been really useful in doing that and sort of helping with this kind of selection. So just to let you know, the kind of last couple of weeks we've been experimenting with a bit more of a formal way of doing the group critiques that have helped people to kind of format where their research or projects are at, using something a bit more like a Petticuccia sort of style presentation, where it's just a few slides that kind of deal with these, structure the kind of presentations in terms of these questions. So I've put that onto the Padlet if you want to have a look at that in the archive and resources. And I mean, we're still kind of thinking about, well, if you want more discussion, I hope that's kind of what you're hungry for after these kind of sessions, is that, yeah, there's the opportunity to, self-organize these critiques as well. And kind of like, it doesn't have to be something that we're always there kind of overseeing. So I think, the format and the tool is there, the template's there if you want to kind of like consider it and adapt it and use it for your own means as well. But I think we're kind of in an interesting situation at the moment where we're, really exploring some new territory, and some like territory that's not just new for us, but I think is genuinely new. The situation that we're in is a new situation. So I think it's great to be reflecting that back to each other as much as possible, and kind of trying to think, well, what's the kind of neat and, condensed way of kind of presenting this stuff to each other. So that's there on the Padlet if you want it. I'll send an email out with some kind of more opportunities for coming together, either through these one-to-ones or in sessions as well. You'll also notice that kind of some of the meetings that would have been having in Biella, that the residents would have reflected on, where we'll kind of record those and then put them up, so it's more so everyone can get an access into that. We had a great conversation with Let Eat Be and my own Pistolette essay about a food project, which I think probably connects with quite a lot of people's practices of food and growing projects. So do check out what's on the Padlet. Please keep on with your updates. It's really important at the moment to be sort of sharing and doing that extra bit of connecting at this stage, because I think we're going to start to have to think about what we're pulling from that and what the general conversation is. So I don't really want to be missing stuff at this point. So I kind of do think if you engage in some activities, just like get a note of it up on there, because it's really helping us to do all the connecting up that is such a good opportunity through this residency. I'm really, properly valuing it. So yeah, I think that'll do us for today. Thanks again to everyone for joining. Massive thanks to Alessandra and Gemma for a brilliant presentation, some really provocative kind of exercises for us to do as well, and I'm sure stuff that we'll carry on with in the next couple of weeks. So I'll look forward to seeing everyone when I see you. And take care. Okay, ciao. Oh, and thanks to Clara again, of course.
Ciao.